That boy looking good. How are you, man?
Man, you know what? I'm in a place right now, man, that it's unbelievable, man, and it's just blowing my mind, man. I'm kind of in awe, and at the same time, it's kind of like I knew this was coming, but when
Hmm.
you're finally there, it's pretty crazy, man.
Absolutely. And everybody, I'm talking to Mike Garza right now, who has so many testimonies that it's like, which one do we even have to talk? Which one we got to talk about today? But it's
Man,
so
come
cool
on.
because I see that I think it's the perfect time because I feel like you're really just striving. You're in this place of like on the other side of everything that God's been doing in your life for the
Come
last chunk of time since you've been saved by his grace. And
on.
I love to just tell people your story, man. I gotta get the people to hear it, man. It's incredible your journey from just a little bit of us talking. I've just been able to really pick up on the fact that like you went from ashes to glory, in a
Um,
matter of one incident that changed your life forever. So I would love for you to share that with the listeners today and just really unpack what God's done in your life from then till now. Of course, it's a long story, so feel free to share away. All right.
Come on, man. I always tell people, man, I feel like if to be able to understand me today, you have to know where I come from, man. And I
Mm-hmm.
come from broken beginnings, man, where I mean, my family, we didn't believe in God. You know, God was the furthest thing. Only time we prayed was, hey, when things are bad and we need him to kind of, hey, this the genie. Hey, we need him
Mm-hmm.
to do something.
Right.
Um, so man, I just grew up, I grew up not really caring and not really having no stability where I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. And as a young kid who was going through, just trying to find life and trying to figure out what was going on, it was just crazy. My life that I lived ended up causing me to go to prison in 2009. And I got out in 2014. But the way that I was living in prison it was crazy. It's prison, and
Mm-hmm.
you want trouble, it's there.
Right.
I did 5 years. I did 5 years flat. I did my whole time because I was acting up. I did it all. I was supposed to get out in 2.5 years. I got out.
That boy got an extended stay.
I extended stay, man. And so I got out in March 26, 2014. And I got out of prison, and I was just like, I'm not going to be able to get a job type stuff. So I started, trying to do the fast money and hustling and doing, and what's crazy is I never hustled before in my life, man. And when I started hustling, when I tell you, I was doing great. Like I was in the sense of the world, I was
Mm-hmm.
on top. I was getting rid of a lot of drugs, at big quantities. So I started going to the clubs, and I ended up like, again, I'm a social person. So when I would go to the
Mm-hmm.
clubs, I used to buy everybody shots. I used to
Right.
be like, hey, give me 100 shots. And they would like line up 100 shots, but I didn't even know 100. There wasn't even 100 people inside the club sometimes,
Mm-hmm. Right.
but I would just buy them. And so I would just give them out, and people kept on like, man, who is this guy? And again, we're in like nightclubs, and I was just like, they were like, who are you? I was like, I'm Mike. Like, what do you mean? They're
Mm-hmm.
like you just buying shots? I was like, yeah, we're all gonna drink. And so fast forward a little bit, I just kept going to the bars just to spend the drug money. Hey, we're gonna go out, we're gonna find some females, hey, let's go do our thing.
Right.
And a club owner came up to me one time, and I had got arrested because of all the stuff that was going on. I was on GPS monitor. I was about to be on house arrest for 3 months, and I was spending money like crazy, and she was like, we don't need you to be away. Like, we need you in the club. I was like, man, I'm gonna be on house arrest. She's like, what if we say you're a club promoter? Like, what if we say that? And this is your job. And I'm like, well, maybe it'll work. So she's like, if they need to talk to me, I'll tell them that you work here just so that I could go to the clubs. I
Mm-hmm.
called my probation officer, and I told my probation officer, hey, I'm a club promoter. I need to be in the nightclubs. Bro, they gave me a pass to be in the nightclubs. So they turned off my GPS monitor at 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m. Turn it back on at 3:30 in the morning. So I had from 5 to 3:30 in the morning just to go do whatever I wanted to do.
Wow.
And I just kept building a name for myself. I started doing like comedy skits and getting with celebrities and just doing a bunch of different skits, and they were going viral. And I became a club promoter. And while I became a club promoter, that's when the whole, I used to have a hashtag F Mike G, because when everybody would see me, they were like, oh, you know this guy? And they're like, F that guy. And like, that's the way that I would play with them.
Right.
And so they were like, you know, my hashtag was F Mike G. Well, I became, you know, a promoter, really just promoting nightclubs. I mean, the world. I mean, it was for the world, like literally sinning all day, all night. Like that's what came with it. One night, man, I got into a fight, leaving a bar that I used to promote, and I had got into a fight, and I broke my hand, and I ended up getting a rod and some pins stuck in my hand. But that night that I broke my hand, I was on a motorcycle, so I couldn't, you know, the gear, the clutch, and everything is over here on this side. Well, I couldn't really move my hand because my hand was broken. So I told one of my friends, his name was Tino. I was like, hey man, he's like, let me ride your bike home. You get in my SUV and I'll follow you. And so remember, I just got into a fight, but I was on GPS monitor. My monitor, it was like two something in the morning. So I had, yeah, so it's about to go off, and I live on the other side of town. So I'm like, I'm like, come on, bro, let's go. So I get in the car, I take off. His gas tank is on E. Like, when I'm talking about E, I'm talking about EE. And I'm like, no, like, so we pull over. I'm like, hey, your gas, like, we need gas. I just have dope money, so I don't have credit cards. And we go pull into this gas station. And when we pulled in, I don't know why, man, but I just got out of the truck and I got on my bike, and I kind of like pushed it with my arm and put it into gear. And he's like, hey, and I took off. I had no helmet, no jacket, no nothing. I was going over 100 miles an hour because, again, I had to get home because the monitor was about to go off. And so I'm going over 100 miles an hour. I pass up a cop. He's on the side of the highway, and I pass him up going 100. And he turns on his lights, and I'm like, oh man, I ain't got time to deal with this. So I just smashed the gas even more. Well, the exit that I wanted to take, I couldn't really turn because my hand, I couldn't really function with the bike. So I just like, man, I'm going to go to the next exit. I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to exit. I'm going to turn, and I'm going to be on the highway. I'm going to be good. Man, I'm going so fast that, again, over 100 miles an hour, air's just coming at you. You're trying to see and trying to stay under the shield. Well, by the time I looked, there was a car that was in front of me, and they had their back tail lights that were off. There was like, it was 3:30 in the morning. Their tail lights weren't on. I hit the back of it, hit the wall. I slid 500 feet. My bike slid 1,000 feet. I got road rash everywhere. My foot turned around twice during the whole thing, during the accident. So I remember just being in the street, and I couldn't see nothing, but I just remember just being there, and I was like, and I just hear a car like, you know, braking, and because I'm in the middle of on the access road. And I just remember him getting out, and he's like, I was like, hey man, like, bro, the cops are gonna come, like, throw me in the ditch, like, just like,
roll me over, bro.
I can't go to jail, bro. I can't go to jail.
My monitor's about to go off.
My monitor, I'm like, bro, just throw me right there. Like, bro, I don't want to go to jail. And he's like, man, bro, I gotta call the cops. Like, bro, you're messed up. And my whole head was scraped. I mean, I had blood everywhere. I just remember, I don't remember much. I remember passing out. I remember waking up in the ambulance. I remember just seeing the light. They were kind of trying to ask me questions. I get to the hospital, and they were like, do you have anybody that we can call? Do you have a number? And I gave them my wife's number. And the doctor was just like, man, this is going to hurt. And they grabbed my foot and kind of like, you know, picked it up to kind of move it. And I was out. I just remember falling asleep. I just out and the pain. I wake up. And when I wake up, you know, everybody, you know, my wife and everybody's there, and they're just crying. They're just like, basically they said that I was going to die. So my probation officer went, because the hospital was like, hey, this guy got a monitor. Like, they couldn't cut it off. They couldn't do nothing. They had me handcuffed to the bed. They're like, basically he can't, like, he's about to die. But like he came in, I had no ID, no nothing. So they were like, well, if that monitor was on his foot, this is who it is. But they couldn't identify me because my face was just so messed up. My head, I was swollen and everything. So my probation officer went back to the judge and told the judge basically that I was going to die, that they want to cut the monitor off just so that my family, I don't have to be handcuffed to the bed, just so I can, whatever. Bro, they cut the monitor off. And that very next, I think it was that same day, I wake up. Your boy wakes up.
That boy,
your boy wakes up, and I'm like, hey, and they're like, man, the doctor said you're never gonna be able to walk the same, and all of this stuff, right? And they're like, but you're off probation. Like my probation, they thought I was gonna die, and so they didn't even press charges on me. They didn't, because they could have. I didn't get a DWI. I was 3 times over the limit, and I had about an 8 ball of Coke in my pocket that, your boy was out. Your boy was out partying. And they didn't charge me with none of that. So fast forward, my foot, I did 23 surgeries in 18 months trying to save my foot. And
say that again.
18 surgeries. In 18 months, I did 23 surgeries. And
wow.
Yeah. And they were just trying to fix my foot. And the best that they could do was, at the end, I had to turn my foot sideways and kind of like hobble. Right. And I was like, I told the doctor, like, man, I can't live like this, man. Like I'm young. Like he wanted me to put like this big old thing at the bottom of my shoe to kind of like help it roll. And I was like, dude, I'm fly. I'm not going to do that. Like, no offense to anybody that does that has it. Cause we have
does not fly.
But hey, for my quality of life, it wasn't going to fit. It wasn't going to work. And so I told him to cut it off, and he ended up cutting my foot off. When they cut my foot, I flatlined twice on the operating table. Man, I'm telling you, like it was crazy. Cause I remember waking up in the surgery. Like I remember I woke up, like just sat up. And it was because I flatlined and they had put the tube. And when they had put the tube, it like inflated me like with air. And I just like literally came up and I was like trying to pull the thing out. And the doctors were, trying to wrestle me. And then they ended up coming in later on and they were like, man, you flatlined twice. And they think it was because of my sleep apnea. They gave me more morphine than they were supposed to. And the sleep apnea with the morphine was just like, yo, your boy's asleep. And what is so crazy is I tell everybody when I died, like I didn't see nothing. Like I didn't see no lights. I didn't see, but it was just pitch. Like I could literally just remember like being in a dark room, but like being aware that I'm in a dark room. And it was like no fire, no, it was just pitch black. Couldn't see nothing.
Would you describe it as dormant?
Man, yeah, for sure.
It's interesting because I just had a conversation with Lisa Schwartz yesterday, who's one of like my spiritual leaders out here, who has a podcast and a platform of her own. She's a beast. And she was talking about how like when our spirits are dead, our spirits get alive in Christ, but until that moment, we're dormant, so it ceased to exist, so therefore it's like, so it seems like you're describing like you weren't in a hell place yet, but you were in a place where you realized like your spirit was dead in that moment.
It was, again, and I'm scared of the dark. Like even to this day, like I light got to be on. My phone got to be on something. It's just, some childhood trauma stuff. But I never like, even now, like, so that scared me enough to be like, oh man, like, dang, that's crazy. But for me, it was still like, your boy make it through anything. Like,
that boy got the ego still.
Yeah. Hey, shit, I did this. That's that how boy, strong.
That boy shining. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I cut my foot, they cut it. I go about 9 months to almost a year without a prosthetic leg. And my friend, Tony, and he's like ripping up carpet out of some vacant apartments. And he's like, hey bro, I found a prosthetic foot inside this house that I'm ripping up. He's like, didn't you get your leg cut off? And I just literally got my leg cut off. And I'm like, yeah, what side it is? He's like, it was the right side. And I'm like, bro, I got my right foot cut off. And I'm like, what size? And he goes, I don't know. It just has like a number, like a number at the bottom. Bro, it ended up being a perfect match. Now, with the prosthetic leg. So
That boy whipped it out.
yeah. So with a prosthetic leg, this is your mold, right? So I didn't know any of this yet. I just was like worried about this foot. So
That
I
boy
was
got the
like,
croc on. Let's go.
yeah, with the croc.
With the
I got
camo
him. I
croc.
got him in sport mode too. So
I'm dead, bro.
so I go to my friend's house and I go pick up that leg that night. And I grabbed the leg and you know, he's like, man, can you use it? I was like, oh, I don't know. We're gonna see. I get the leg, I take off, I go park. I parked at a McDonald's and I just like I'm looking at all the stuff that he gave me, and it's a leg, somebody else's leg, and then this is what kind of keeps it on. It's called a liner. And so I'm like trying to stick my foot in the leg and my little nub. I'm trying to stick it in the leg. And I'm like, you know, my leg's not fitting. And I'm like, man, so I take it home. I leave it I leave it in there for, you know, for, I don't know. I think another 6-7 months. I leave the leg in the closet. And then one day I have some guy that hits me up on Facebook and he's like, hey, I work for a prosthetic company and I want to build you a leg. I kind of been following you and I want to build you a leg out of my house. He's like, but you know, we got to keep it on the low. And I'm like, man, let's do it. He builds me a leg, and I mean, literally, I wish I should have brought it. It's like a makeshift leg. Like, I mean, but we used that foot that my friend Tony found in a vacant apartment. And the foot was a perfect match. Like, it literally matched up with my foot. And I wore that foot for like the next, that prosthetic, I had it for the next 6-7 months. And at this time, I've been going to church because again, I got denied for a prosthetic leg. I put in for Medicaid and everything. This is like my coming to Jesus. Before I got
Let's pause right there though, because I just want to share that was the funniest story I think I've ever had somebody share on this podcast. Wow. How you have a plug that this dude just randomly hit you up like, hey, you don't got a leg. I found a leg. And then you got somebody else that's like, yo, keep it on the low, but I want to build you a leg.
I want to build you a leg.
Like, that boy got the plugs for everybody. Like, bro, everybody looking out for Mike G.
And you know what is so crazy is that when it was happening, like it was literally like, again, I didn't know anything about God at this time. And it was like, how can, like, you know, for me, it was like, how can this line up like that? Right. And so again, I ended up putting in for a prosthetic leg, and Medicaid kept denying me. And part of Medicaid, if you're over the age of 17, they won't pay for a prosthetic. Like, you're basically an adult, figure it out on your own. So I ended up
go work at IHOP.
Yeah, go hop, go serve tables, go do something. And so I'm literally sitting there and I get the call, and the lady was like, hey, you know, basically you got denied. And once you get denied 3 times, there's no more appeals. And so I just remember hanging up the phone, and my 3-month-old son is laying down on the floor. My daughter, she was 6 months old, is laying on the couch, and I'm in a wheelchair. And I'll never forget, man. I was just like, I hung up, and I knew at that point right there that this is before I got the leg found the leg. And I knew right then at that moment, I was like, I'm never going to walk again. Like, I'm going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Like, we're already struggling because I can't bring in no money. I was a drug dealer, but the amount of weight that I was selling was so big that I didn't feel comfortable selling drugs with one leg. Like, who's not going to rob a one-leg drug dealer? Like, yeah, who's not going to run off on the plug? Like, I was getting rid of big stuff. And so I just remember, always hearing, if you're like in a bad spot, you call out to God and he'll help you. Man, I cussed God smooth out. I was like, F you, F your mama. Your mama wasn't a virgin. She just had sex with all these dudes and didn't know who your dad was. And so she made up this, man, I was going off.
You were like Saul.
I was going off on him. I was like, why would you have me here? Like, I want to jump off a bridge and I can't even walk to it. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. Like, what the hell do you have me here for? And I just remember crying. I cried myself to sleep, and I laid down. I wake up, the family, kids are coming home. Wife's about to get home. You got to put on the face. You know, you're not, everything's been good, you know, oh, I've been here, oh, and kind of cleaned up and kind of try to do your little part, right? And we're sitting there, we're watching a movie, and I get this is like about 4 hours later, and I get a text message from a friend who's sitting in Bible study, and I hadn't talked to her at this time for about, I want to say going on 2 years. And she's like, hey, Mike, I'm sitting in church, and I feel like God is telling me to invite you to church this Sunday. And I was just immediately bawled. I was crying because for the first time, I kind of I just cussed God smooth out. Told him his mama wasn't a virgin. You know, and he's inviting me to church. At first, I was like, they're gonna whoop me when I get there. Like he's gonna have them set me up. But that was a Wednesday. That Sunday, I went to church, September 2nd, 2018. I'll never forget it, man. I walk in, matter of fact, I didn't even walk into the church. I had crutches. I crunched my way into church because I had one leg. And, you know, the sinners sit all the way in the back. So I sat on the last row, and I'm sitting over there, and they're over there praising and worshiping and you know, putting the music, and I'm just listening to the music. I'm a music man. So you know, whether it's Christian or whatever, I listen. And I just remember just hearing the words of these the songs, and I just remember crying, and the pastor was like, if you need a breakthrough, if you need God to answer you, like, just talk to him, tell him. And so you know, I was just like, hey, like, I'm here, like, I showed up, like, what's gonna happen? Well, the pastor's up there preaching for about an hour, and the sermon was called God's Plan. And it was right around the time that Drake's song God's Plan was out. And the pastor came out, and he's up there preaching for about an hour, and he's about an hour and 13 minutes into his sermon. And I know this because I went back and watched the video of him actually, you know, prophesying. And he just, I mean, an hour and 13 minutes, he's just up there, he's preaching. There's about 100 people in the church. It's a small little church. And he just stops mid-sermon, and he's like, hey, my man back there, pick your hand up. And I'm like, and he's like, you pick your hand up. And I'm like, all right. And so I pick my hand up, and he starts prophesying. What I know now is prophesying, but I didn't know what it was then. And he just starts telling me, man, God told me to tell you, God, I kept trying to leave, and God kept bringing me back to you, man. And God told me to tell you that he's now about to use your life, and everything that you've ever been through in your life, God's right now about to use it for your good. He goes, and God's, I want you to know that God's got big plans for you, and the things that God's going to do in your life, you can't even fathom it. And I mean, he was just saying stuff that I always had in my heart, in my soul, that I've never told anybody. And if I were to say exactly what he prophesied, people would be like, nah, but I know.
Right. You can't take that experience away from you. Yeah.
You can, like, I mean, at that moment, I knew that God was real.
Hitting every button that he needed to get you to, like,
I mean, when I tell you, every little button that he needed to push was activated.
Wow.
And I remember leaving the church that day, and the pastor's like, if you give God 1 year of your life, you don't have to come all the time, you don't have to be perfect, but if you give God 1 year of your life will never, ever be the same. And so I was like, all right, cool. Well, then that's when I ended up, I was going to church. Nothing was changing. My life just felt like it was, you know, falling more apart because I'm trying to follow him. So I can't beat people up like I want to do. You know, I'm trying to stop doing stuff. And I want to say a year before, I want to say it's about, I got to look at the thing, but I think it was like a week before my year was up. And I kept telling God, like, my refrigerator is empty. What is going on? I'm like, it's about to be a year. You said if I give you a year, like, I seen God move here and there, but nothing like you knew besides, you know, what he prophesied. And I remember it was like a week before my year was up, I got put on the news. My story got put on the news because at this time, my friend, his son ended up having a football practice, and they like twisted his ankle a certain way or something like that. He ended up having to go to the hospital. They thought he sprained his ankle. Well, his ankle wasn't getting better after like a couple of weeks, and so they were like, man, something's up, like his ankle is not getting better, like it's getting worse. So, y'all need to do something. So they went back in, they did scans and everything. They left. I think she said that they were in like a drive-through of McDonald's, and she gets the phone call from the hospital saying that they need to rush back to the hospital, that they need to admit her son because he has cancer in his foot. And again, at this time, they're like, completely, I mean, you just find out your 10-year-old son has cancer. And it's like, I can just imagine. They go back to the hospital. The doctor's like, look, we need to amputate his foot. And so they're like, nah, like, whoa, wait. You're like, right. You're not just gonna cut his foot. So the little boy was like, man, do we know anybody that is an amputee? Like, and they're like, yeah. And I had been going over there at this time, chilling over there at their house for like, I want to say about 3 months every day, because my friend was like intrigued with me going to church. He's like, bro, you're going to church? And I'm like, yeah, like Jesus is real. Like, and so I'm over there every day, just kind of telling them about God and what God has been doing in my life. And the little boy had never seen that I had a prosthetic leg. And so they were like, yeah, your dad's friend, that he comes every day, he has a prosthetic leg. Well, the little boy never paid attention to me. So they called me and they're like, hey, can you come over here? I'm like, yeah, I'll go. So I go over there and he's like, oh my God, like you do got a prosthetic. And this is like the janky prosthetic one we found in the house.
Right.
And so he was just like, man, like you're walking normal. And like, I'm like, bro, you're going to be all right. Like, I was like, but you're not going to get amputated. Like, they're not going to amputate your foot. Like, you're going to do the chemo. You're going to be healed. Like, man, God's got you. And again, at this time, I was in church, like, at this time, like deep. I was searching for God. Right. And I was kind of telling them about, just what God has been doing in my life and everything. So fast forward, I go with them, we're going over there. I'm chilling with them at the hospital during his chemo, we're playing video games just so that he could see like, hey, man, we're here, I'm here for you, bro. You're going to be all right. Well, during his break, his chemotherapy break, my friend's company was throwing like a picnic company party at Fiesta, Texas. And he's like, bro, like, bring the family. Like, we're just going to take Brian. He's going to have a good day. And I was like, bet. So we go. But the leg that I had, it was like a makeshift leg. So it was not like the best leg. So while I'm there, the leg starts cracking just because it's so hot, the sun, the wear and tear. And so I'm like, man, I'm looking at it. I'm like, so, I'm just trying to make it the best. We do the whole day at Six Flags. I end up going home. I'm sitting on my bed and I take off my leg and, my leg sitting here, my leg literally just falls like this on the carpet and it shatters.
Whoa.
I mean, just shatters. And so I'm like, what? And so I'm like, all right, cool. Like I put a little tape. I'm like, I duct tape it. I'm like, man, it's got to work for right now because I don't have money and I don't even know where this guy is that built the leg no more. Like, I'm not in touch with him no more.
He ghosted you.
Ghosted me. Hey, but he made me a leg. You know what I mean? So I go over there that night because I've been going every night, going over there chilling with his dad. And so I go over there and they're like, I'm on crutches. And they're like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, bro, my leg broke. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like, at Six Flags, I guess, whatever it was, it just broke. So the little boy ended up finding out that, and then he ended up telling them like, hey, let's buy him a leg. And they're like, man, the legs are expensive. Like, you can't just do that. So the little boy called the news and told the news about me. And they told me that I was going over there for an interview for little Brian. Like he wanted me there for like a support system, but I ended up going there and then they ended up ambushing me with the cameras like, hey, we're really here to help you. Wow. Fast forward, I get a prosthetic leg. Not only do I get a prosthetic leg, but I get a job helping people get prosthetic legs. And so now what I do is I convince people to cut their foot off if it needs to be cut off. And I also help them understand what it's like to be an amputee and kind of walk them through the process of what it's like and what to expect. And that's kind of my job now, man.
Wow. See how like God, it's so crazy. I was just, I was just listening to the woman I was telling you about, Lisa Schwartz's podcast, where she was really teaching about the principle of how Jesus would use like your infirmity, the thing that is the thing that you're so upset about, the thing that is really holding you back, or like, you know, like the guy that was on his mat, you know, for years, and then he said, get off the mat. And then the guy that was blind, and all he heard was people spitting on him during those times, because he was so that's how they treated people that had disabilities. They used it as like, oh, your parents must have sinned for you to be like that, so they would spit on him. Right? Jesus used that same thing to heal him. Jesus spit, used the saliva to heal him. So that thing that he thought was going to hold him back in life was the thing that actually brought him to life and hope and salvation and everything, and being saved and redeemed by the healer of Jesus Christ, using that same infirmity that's going to get you into that next place of realizing that, like, oh, God's got you. So that's exactly what the little boy did, as well as that's what he did with you, with the because like the little boy, even think about this, like he was going through his own struggle, yet he was using like the thing that was his struggle to bless you, all through like the lens of God. You know, like how crazy is that, bro? Like you got such a phenomenal story.
And then he ended up, after I got my leg, he ended up getting his leg amputated. I want to say about a couple of months after. And I was able to give him back a prosthetic leg. And it's just crazy how it just came full circle. And I tell everybody, I know we got 7 minutes, and I know we kind of wanted to talk about the house and stuff like that, but like I tell people all the time, like, I don't know why God picked me. And sometimes like the life that I'm living now, this day, like I never dreamed this. I couldn't have wrote this. I couldn't have manipulated my way into this. But for some reason, God saw fit to bless me. And sometimes the blessing feels too heavy. And I feel unworthy of it. Like I just got a property with an acre. That is like an acre, bro. Like
I see it, bro.
I wasn't even trying to get this property. I was going to the ghetto spots because you know, I got a background, and you know, your boy, I never worried about credit, so I didn't even think that my credit was anything. Yeah, it was a factor. And so I was going to these places like hood spots, like hood apartments, hood neighborhoods. But when I was going, I just kept feeling the Holy Spirit, like, why do you keep seeing yourself like this? Like, it's cool that you're from there, but why do you keep like, and they kept telling me no. And I got a good job. I got good rental history. I got good credit now. I've been fixing my life, but I kept going to these spots and they were denying me. And I was like, I had 60 days. I put in my 60-day notice at my apartment. And on the 58th day, 58 days, it was straight no's. I think I was like $500 into application fees and just straight, oh no, your background. Like, we're sorry, we can't. Everything's good, but your background. And so I was just going to the houses, like the little for rent. They write the number, like, hey, I could get in these real fast. And the Holy Spirit kept telling me, like, why do you keep seeing yourself like this? Like, it's nothing wrong. It's nothing wrong if you're there, but why do you keep seeing yourself there?
Wow.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm already $500 in. I'm going to put in for property now that I don't think that I could get. And I went to that one spot, and it was an acre, like a fenced in acre. And I was like, it's bigger, it's twice as big as my old apartment that I just moved out of. And I'm like, God, I don't deserve this. There's no way that I deserve this, but I'm going to put in for it.
I'm going to trust you with it.
I put in for it. Well, I hadn't heard nothing. I ended up getting approved in the ghetto from one of these spots. And I was on my way to go sign that lease. And on the way of me signing that lease, this new property that I'm at now, they called me and they were like, hey, everything's good. All we're waiting for is your rental history. If you can send that to us, you're good. And so I was like, what property is this? And they're like, oh, the acre. And I'm like, oh, like what? So I was like, man, hold on. I go to my apartments. I tell my apartments, hey, like, can you send this over there? They send it. The owner calls me and he's like, hey, I'm going to approve you. Can you meet me at the house tonight at 7? And so me not thinking, I was like, nah, it ain't true. Like, so I told the other place, hey, I got busy with work. Can I just come back like later on or tomorrow? And they're like, yeah, just come tomorrow in the morning. So I was like, bet, I got a meeting with this guy tonight. If it doesn't fail, like I'll be in there. I get there, we talk, man. He's like, hey, I'm like, here's the money. Here's the deposit. Here's the first month's rent. Here's the dog deposit here. And he's like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't got a receipt. I'm like, man, you can sign it on a piece of paper. We ended up signing, man. And again, the only time that I seen, like, I was just telling one of my coworkers this morning, I was sitting out on that property because the sun rises in the back.
Mhm.
And I was just literally sitting there, and I was just crying and just telling
Yeah,
God
yeah.
thank you, because I remember being in a prison cell, and prisons are made in the middle of nowhere. Like, they're
Mhm.
like dead smack in the middle of nowhere. So if you escape, like, they're gonna find you. Like, dude, it's nothing for miles. And I remember sitting outside of my room, my cell, and like the kind you could see barely see out the window. But I just remember always seeing fields. And then today was almost like a surreal moment, because I'm sitting there on my property looking out at an acre, and I got cows in my backyard, like, and it just blew my mind, man. And
Wow.
again, I heard Steve Harvey say that he prayed to God to give him 6 acres. And when I heard that, I was like, man, 6 acres is big. So I'm just like, I always remember hearing that. And so I
Mhm.
always told God, like, just I'll give me an acre.
Mhm.
And it was cool. What's so crazy is God revealed it to me during this time was I got what I asked for. So your words are powerful.
Absolutely.
Steve Harvey was asking for 6. I was just asking for 1, and I got the
Mhm.
1.
Right.
But hey, again, man, it's crazy what God would do in your life. And again, for me, I'm like the worst of the worst, and you can't tell me nothing different, that because I know me, you know what I mean? And I can't believe what God has done in my life, man. And if God could do it in my life with me, with my background and the things that I've done,
Mhm.
he can change anybody's life, bro. Anybody.
Absolutely. And you were the worst of the worst. Since I've known you,
Come
man, I
on.
just feel like you're one of the most brightest lights I know. And I feel like he's definitely using you to share his glory. And he knows that you're a phenomenal speaker. You're very engaging, man. You keep the energy up, you keep the nuggets of truth flowing. And I feel like he's just using you in the biggest and brightest way every single day with every single person that you touch, because he knows you're going to put on for him, because he knows that you know that it's not your own doing, it's his doing.
Come on, man. Come on. Hey, come on, somebody.
Absolutely, bro. So I truly appreciate you coming on the show, bro. What a beautiful story, beautiful testimony. And I'm just so happy and grateful that God's really opened up those doors for you. The future is still bright. So don't ever rule out the blessings that God has for your life. He's going to use other people to continue blessing you in the ways that only he knows how to. So just open up and receive that, and just let him open the doors for you to just walk on through. Keep speaking that truth into the youth as well. I know you're really pouring into the juveniles as well, and sharing your story with them. So I encourage you in that as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. Real quick, is there any place that you want people to go find you at?
Man, go to on my Instagram, Mike_G comedy. I don't really use Instagram, but I'm starting to use it more.
All
And
right.
then on Facebook, I'm under Meme Garza.
All
You
right.
know,
Beautiful.
hey, that's my ministry, man. It's a meme.
I got you. Me mystery. I love that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so funny. All right, bro. I'll go ahead and I'll link it in the episode notes if people want to go find out more about you and just connect with you on there as well. So appreciate you, Mike. Love you so much, brother. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And you're always so supportive of the show. Truly appreciate that, man. You're one of the few that just completely always are sharing and just showing so much love. So thank you for that.
Come on, man. I like birds, baby.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right, talk to you.
All right.